A habit is a conscious behavioral pattern that, through repetition, becomes unconscious or second nature. We all have our daily routines, made of a series of habits, but how are they constructed? Some habits are essential to what we do every day, some we just pick up along the way. In this era of smartphones, a tendency that most of us fall victim to is the repetitive checking of our phones. Many of us don't even realize that checking our phones has become an ingrained habit. So why do we do this? How did our phones come to play such a significant role in our daily routines? Let's take a closer look at how our brains form habits. Habits are actually an adaptation to reduce the amount of energy used in the brain. For instance, the first time you try to ride a bike, it is a challenging experience. You don't yet know how to coordinate your movements and stay balanced. This conscious thinking involves your prefrontal cortex, an area of your brain involved in planning complex behavior. With practice, riding a bike goes from requiring high concentration to being an automatic process. The first time you do something, it might take a lot of brain power and mental energy, but as you repeat it, it becomes easier. The more you repeat the task, the less your prefrontal cortex has to plan, and the more your striatum becomes involved. The striatum is a part of your brain that helps facilitate movement and is a critical component of the reward system. When you finally take your training wheels off, a positive feedback loop in your midbrain releases chemical rewards. These rewards enforce your behavior and can even be released before your behavior's begun, resulting in a craving for that particular habit. As you repeat the habit, whether it be riding a bike or checking your phone, your brain begins to recognize it as something that's important. Through repetition, your brain creates a cycle called the habit feedback loop. The cue of your phone notifications triggers the behavior of looking at your phone, which releases a chemical reward that tells your brain to do this habit again. As a result of the habit loop, communication between your prefrontal cortex, your striatum, and midbrain are strengthened to allow the chunking of routines into a singular unit. So, how do these parts of our brain communicate with one another? The human brain is made up of billions of neurons, which are the specialized cells of the nervous system. These cells build circuits to transmit messages from one part of the brain to the next. When a circuit is used more, it becomes stronger and more efficient at sending messages. When a circuit is rarely used, it becomes less efficient at sending messages. To illustrate this phenomenon, imagine two pathways. One pathway is small and not well used. The other pathway is large and well-defined due to heavy use. Much like a person choosing which path to follow, neuronal signals follow faster and more direct paths rather than complex and winding ones, as it's more energy efficient. So, when a new behavior is repeated over and over again, such as checking our phone, the neural pathways are strengthened. This causes behaviors to become wired into our brains and helps our brain conserve energy. Since habits help our brains save energy, and because they elicit a reward, it makes sense that breaking habits can be very difficult. After all, why would our brain want to expend more energy than it needs to? Breaking a habit requires us to consciously think about not doing it, which can be a considerable challenge when the behavior has become automatic. Thankfully, due to the brain's capacity to change throughout our life, it is possible to rewire our neuronal pathways and thus break our bad habits. The easiest way to do this is by returning to the idea of a habit feedback loop. By recognizing the cue that causes us to check our phone, we can replace the behavior with a different one, such as reading a book. Although constantly checking our smartphones may not be the most efficient use of our brain's energy, not all habits are bad. As mentioned earlier, a habit is the brain's way of conserving energy. An astounding 40 to 45% of our daily behaviors are habit-based. Turning on and off lights, brushing our teeth, eating breakfast, and tying our shoes are all daily habits that save our brain time and energy. Habits can be both helpful and harmful. Even though we may pick up a few unhealthy ones throughout the course of our life, habits are an essential aspect of human nature. Understanding how habits work may be half the battle of breaking old ones or forming new ones. With this basis of understanding and conscious thought, we have the power to rewire our brains and change our lives.